Hi there, welcome to Scrap and Coffee. So in this video I'm going to show you quickly how I've attached pages in the I Am mini album, and once we've done that we are going to construct the inside covers. So we have 4 pages and I always like to start with the last page. I think that's because I'm right-handed. I like to start on my most right hinge attaching the pages. So you are going to place the hinge inside the binding opening on your page, and I've made the hinge out of Tyvek and I really love the end result of it, but it's a pretty flimsy material and getting that hinge in the opening was a little bit more difficult than with the cardstock that's a little bit more sturdy. So I really had to work it, but I put my hand into the pocket on the back side of the page because there's the opening of for the binding, and then I could really place that hinge in there. I remove the tape backing from one side first, and then once I stick one side down I will remove the tape backing on the other side and then stick the back side down, and it can be pretty difficult to get that tape backing out of there, as you can see, but with a little bit of patience it will work. Really, because this material is more flimsy, I was not comfortable removing both sides of the tape backing at once. I just knew that was not gonna work for me. So when we remove that tape backing, I can burnish the back side of the page down. And this is what you're gonna repeat for all 4 pages. So this is the last page that I'm putting in, and I just repeated the process for every page. Here I removed the last part of the tape backing. Give that a burnish. And I open this page up because here is where the binding is attached, so that's where I can give it a good burnish. And then all 4 pages are in, and then it's time to start constructing the inside covers. So for that I've prepared some pieces, and I've given a 5/8 of an inch gusset. So we're going to start with 2 pieces of M that have 1 score line and tape goes on the dented side. And I am going to taper these 1/2 inches because I am going to line everything up with it's the same height as the pages and as the binding system. So that's what I'm going to use to line it up. And in order to hide the construction for this, I need to taper it. Otherwise I won't be hiding it with my pattern paper. So you can fold and burnish on both of these pieces. And I will place it in frame in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the first piece, and I'm going to line up the top and the bottom with the Tyvek from the binding system. It's got the same height, and I'm going to place it about 1/8 of an inch away from my gusset that's in between the chipboard pieces of the cover, because you want to have a nice closing of your cover, so you want to stay away from that, about 1/8 of an inch. So once we've got it in place, we can stick it down. And then the other piece is going on the other side of the cover. So again, we're going to line up the top and the bottom with the piece that we've just placed. And here I'm going to stay away about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little less than 1/4 of an inch from that edge of the cover. And I'm just eyeballing it. For me, the most important part is that my 2 pieces line up on the top and the bottom. So hold everything in place. and stick that down. So now I'm going to make a pocket on the inside. So we open these flaps up and I have to measure the space that I have in between the score lines, and I really advise you to do the same thing. I did give you a measurement in the cutting guide, but if you placed your flaps a little bit different, your spacing might be smaller or wider, so please measure. So this is our piece N. It's going to be a pocket, and I made an acetate window in there. For that you draw the frame like we've done in all the pieces for this album. You measure 1 inch on the sides with a score line and 1/2 inch on the one side that doesn't have a score line. Cut it out, place your tape, cut your acetate. The measurement for that is in the cutting guide as well. And then you have your acetate frame on your pocket if you want it. Because it's optional, you don't need to do it. If you don't like the look, you leave it out. When you place your acetate, always make sure that you are in between the score lines. So then we can miter the corners where the score lines cross each other, where they meet. And you can fold and burnish your score lines. Make sure there is no overlapping. And then we can place this in between your flaps. So again, I just repeated, please measure the amount of space that you have between the score lines of the two flaps that you've placed, and adjust the measurement of your pocket if it's necessary. So make sure that when you stick it down, you are in between those two score lines. You're still able to see both of those score lines. And I'm going to place the pocket about 1/4 inch from the bottom, so it's lined up with the pieces, with the two flaps, the end pieces on the bottom as well. So normally I would place a piece of black cardstock on the chipboard where you now are still able to see the number 1. And for this album I decided not to do it and just see how it goes, and actually worked fine. So I didn't really miss those pieces of cardstock there. Carefully line it up. And then you should be able to fold your flaps over the pocket without any resistance. And in order to keep your flaps closed, you can do several things. You can use a magnet, you can use a swing tab. What I did, I made an insertion point on the one that goes on the bottom of these two flaps, and then you can place a photo mat in there to keep the top flap down. You can see that in the project share, that will be the next video. So then we are going to the back inside cover, and for that we have piece O here. And again, this piece has one score line at 1/2 inch, and you place your tape on the dented side. And then you're going to turn it over towards the bumpy side, and I'm going to draw a frame here. And I'm going to draw the frame 1/2 inch from the 3 sides without the score line, like you can see me doing here. And for this piece I just kept it all in the video because it's a little bit different than what we've done before. And then we have the side with the score line, and there we're going 1 inch in, so that's the same measurements that we would do for a pocket. But on this pencil mark that we've just drawn, the 1 inch on the side with the score line, we're not going to cut it, but we're going to score it. And you do this on the bumpy side. So just with the bumpy side facing up, you're going to make that score line. I'm lining it up in my scoreboard, and you are going to start scoring on your pencil mark on the top, and you stop at the pencil mark on the bottom. So you go from 1/2 inch in to 1/2 inch up. So don't go from cut edge to cut edge. And just carefully score that line. And then on the other 3 pencil marks that we've made, so on the 3 sides without the score line, there we are going to cut. Here I was a little bit distracted. That's it, I'm just often crafting while my daughter or my son is in the same room, and so they're asking my attention quite often, but that's fine. So here we are going to cut out the frame, but only on the 3 sides without a score line. And here I've made a mistake. I didn't know if you noticed, but I've cut twice. Sometimes I don't get my blade out far enough, and then I push against my ruler too much and I'm off my line. But so really get your blade out far enough, because if you have to cut twice, you don't get a nice straight cut. Clean up the corners so it's coming loose, and this is what we want. And then we can fold on that score line that we've made earlier on the 4th pencil line. So carefully, because I wasn't sure how good my score line was going to be, but it was pretty good actually. So fold that over, and as you can see, I'm folding it here towards that bumpy side of that score line that we've made. And so you fold it towards the dented side of the whole piece, if you get what I'm trying to say. So I'm turning it around towards that bumpy side again. I've got my acetate, and here I've placed tape, but only on the acetate, not on my cardstock. And this is really small tape, 1/8 of an inch. And when I'm placing it, what I'm going for is that I have a border of black cardstock showing around the frame. So when I'm placing my pattern paper, I won't see any tape showing here. So carefully I'm trying to line that up. And then on the right bottom corner, I was pretty close towards the frame, so I tried to correct it, but it was stuck down, so I just left it because I think it would be fine. But I could have placed it a little bit better, but at the end it wasn't a problem. So this is just a fun feature where we have an acetate window on that flap. It's not really functional, it's just fun. And on top of the inner flap, we are going to place a pocket, and that's your piece P. So score lines on 3 sides, tape on the dented side, miter your corners, fold and burnish. And then we are going to place it. I'm placing a piece of white cardstock underneath so I can see where I have to line it up, because it was pretty difficult to see. So let's get the white in, and then on the right bottom corner, that's where you want to line it up. So you're going to line it up with that right bottom corner, and then with the bottom edge, and then you will have a little gap in between your pocket and the score line, so it can fold over nicely. So you can place some photo mats in that pocket, and on the back side of the flap it's perfectly sized for a 5x5 photo. So now we can fold on our other score line and we can attach it into the cover. So again here I'm lining it up with the top and the bottom of the tie back from the binding, and I'm staying away about 1/8 of an inch from the gusset in between the chipboard pieces of the cover. So I'm just removing the tape backing partially so I can line it up, get it where I want it, hold it in place and then remove the complete tape backing. Then we are going to attach 2 more pieces on this back side. We are going to start with our piece Q. That's a small piece, that's a flap for a 3x3 photo. And you place your tape on the dented side, and I've tapered the top of that 1/2 inch because that's what you want to hide again from your, where you want to hide your construction. And we've made a pocket, but I will tell you about that in a minute. So this flap, I'm going to place it and I'm going to center it in where I have the same amount of space between that flap and the pocket of our previous piece and the top of that previous piece. So I thought it was about 1/4 of an inch in between your flap and your pocket, and 1/4 of an inch between your flap and the top of the previous flap. So stick that down. And then what that does is when I place a photo mat in the pocket, it will hold the flap down and everything will stay in place. And then we are going to place a pocket on the bottom, but again, I've already prepared my piece and I was lucky because it was gonna fit. But you really need to measure the space that you have in between your score lines and then adjust the measurement of your pocket when it's necessary. So also for this pocket I've made a frame. Again, exactly the same way as we've done all the other frames and acetate windows in the album. So if you want it, all the measurements for it are in your cutting guide from the acetate as well. But if you have to make your pocket a little less wide, then maybe you have to adjust the measurement from the acetate as well a little bit. So please take that in account. And you can leave it out as well, of course. So fold and burnish on your score lines, and I've already done that because I prepared the piece already and then I had to check if it was gonna fit, and like I said, I was lucky because it was gonna fit exactly between there. Because also for that flap you want to stay away about 1/8 of an inch from your gusset between the chipboard pieces from piece Q. So here again I'm lining it up where I am in between the score lines, and I'm going about 1/4 of an inch from the bottom, so I'm lined up with that with your binding system on the bottom. And there we go. So nice area for photos there. And that acetate frame, it's just a fun feature, just something else. And that will keep everything in place. So I'm not doing anything with the other 2 sides of the cover because that's just gonna give too much bulk. So this is the construction for the album. And in the next video, it will be the project share. So I want to thank you for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.